Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're continuing our reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Brahma satisfies Lord Shiva. We're in text number 40 of the 4th canto, 6th chapter. Lord Shiva's lotus feet were worshipped by both the demigods and demons, and still, in spite of his exalted position, as soon as he saw that Lord Brahma was there among all the other demigods, immediately he stood up and offered his respect to him by bowing down and touching his lotus feet. This action is just like that of Vaiṣṇava, who offered his respectful obeisances to Kashyapa Muni. Purport: Kashyapa Muni was in the category of the living entities, but he had a transcendental son, Vaiṣṇava, who is an incarnation of Vishnu. Thus, although Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he offered his respects to Kashyapa Muni. Similarly, when Lord Krishna was a child, put it in a bucket of water. Kashyapa Muni was in the category of the living entities, but he had a transcendental son, Vaiṣṇava, who was an incarnation of Vishnu. Thus, although Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he offered his respects to Kashyapa Muni. Similarly, when Lord Krishna was a child, he used to offer his respectful obeisances to his mother and father, Nanda and Yashoda. Also, at the Battle of Kurukshetra, Lord Krishna touched the feet of Maharaj Yudhishthira because he was his elder. It appears then that the personality of Godhead Lord Shiva and other devotees, in spite of their being situated in exalted positions, instructed by practical example how to offer obeisances to their superiors. Lord Shiva offered his respectful obeisances to Brahma because Brahma was his father, just as Kashyapa Muni was the father of Vaiṣṇava. All the sages who were sitting with Lord Shiva, such as Narada and others, also offered their respectful obeisances to Lord Brahma. After being so worshipped, Lord Brahma, smiling, began to speak to Lord Shiva. Purport: Lord Brahma was smiling because he knew that Lord Shiva is not only easily satisfied, but easily irritated as well. He was afraid that Lord Shiva might be in an angry mood because he had lost his wife and had been insulted by Daksha. In order to conceal this fear, he smiled and addressed Lord Shiva as follows. Lord Brahma said, "My dear Lord Shiva, I know that you are the controller of the entire material manifestation, the combination father and mother of the cosmic manifestation, and the Supreme Brahman, beyond the cosmic manifestation as well. I know you in that way." Purport: although Lord Brahma had received very respectful obeisances from Lord Shiva, still he knew that Lord Shiva was in a more exalted position than himself. Lord Shiva's position is described in Brahma Samhita. There is no difference between Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva in their original positions, but still Lord Shiva is different from Lord Vishnu. The example is given that the milk in yogurt is not different from the original milk from which it was made. Text 43. My dear Lord, you create this cosmic manifestation, maintain it, and annihilate it by expansion of your personality, exactly as a spider creates, maintains, and winds up its web. Purport: in this verse, the word Shiva Shakti is significant. Shiva means auspicious and Shakti means energy. There are many types of energies of the Supreme Lord, and all of them are auspicious. Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar are called Gunavatars, or incarnations of material qualities. In the material world, we compare these different incarnations from different angles of vision. But since all of them are expansions of the Supreme Auspicious, all of them are auspicious, although sometimes we consider one quality of nature to be higher or lower than another. The mode of ignorance, or tamoguna, is considered very much lower than the others. but in the higher sense it is also auspicious. The example may be given herein that the government has both. Lord, your lordship has introduced the system of sacrifices through the agency of Daksha, and thus one may derive the benefits of religious activities and economic development. Under your regulative principles, the institution of the 4 varnas and ashramas is respected. The Brahmanas therefore vow to follow this system strictly. Purport. The Vedic system of varna and ashrama is never to be neglected, because these divisions are created by the Supreme Lord Himself for the upkeep of social and religious order of human society, in human society. The Brahmanas, as the intelligent class of men in society, must be avowed to steadily respect this regulative principle. The tendency in this age of Kali to make a classless society and not observe the principles of varna and ashrama is a manifestation of an impossible dream. Destruction of the social and spiritual orders will not bring fulfillment of the idea of a classless society. One should observe the principles of varna and ashrama strictly for the satisfaction of the Creator, for it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Kṛṣṇa that the 4 orders of the social system, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, are His creation. They should act according to the regulative principles of this institution and satisfy the Lord, just as different parts of the body all engage in the service of the whole. The whole is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His Virat Rupa. Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are respectively the mouth, arms, abdomen, and legs, Mukhabahu Rupadebhya, the universal form of the Lord. So long as they are engaged in the service of the complete whole, their position is secure. Otherwise, they fall down from their respective positions and become degraded. O most auspicious Lord, you have destined the heavenly planets, the spiritual Vaikuntha planets, or the impersonal Brahman sphere, as the respective positions of the performers of auspicious activities. Similarly, for others who are miscreants, you have destined different kinds of hells, which are horrible and ghastly. Yet sometimes it is found that their destinations are just the opposite. It is very difficult to ascertain the cause of this. Bet you want to hear the purport, right? No?
Yes.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is called the Supreme Will. By the Supreme Will, everything is happening. It is said, therefore, that not a blade of grass moves without the Supreme Will. Generally, it is prescribed that performers of pious activities are promoted to the higher planetary systems. Devotees are promoted to the Vaikunthas, or spiritual worlds, and impersonal speculators are promoted to the impersonal Brahman effulgence. But it sometimes so happens that a miscreant like Ajamil is immediately promoted to the Vaikuntha Loka simply by chanting the name of Narayan. Although when Ajamil uttered this vibration, he intended to call his son Narayan, Lord Narayan took it seriously and immediately gave him promotion to Vaikuntha Loka, despite his background, which is full of sinful activities. Similarly, King Daksha was always engaged in the pious activities of performing sacrifices, yet simply because of creating a little misunderstanding with Lord Shiva, he was severely taken to task. The conclusion is, therefore, that the Supreme Will is the ultimate judgment. No one can argue upon this. A pure devotee, therefore, submits in all circumstances to the Supreme Will of the Lord, accepting it as all auspicious. Tatenukampam susamikshamano bunjana evatma kritam vipakam hridvag vapurvi vidaram namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadayabha. The purport of this verse is that when a devotee is in a calamitous condition, he takes it as a benediction of the Supreme Lord and takes responsibility for himself for his past misdeeds. In such a condition, he offers still more devotional services and is not disturbed. One who lives in such a disposition of mind, engaged in devotional service, is the most eligible candidate for promotion to the spiritual world. In other words, such a devotee's claim for promotion to the spiritual world is assured in all circumstances.
Text 46. My Lord, my dear Lord, devotees who have fully dedicated their lives unto your lotus feet certainly observe your presence as Paramatma in each and every being, and as such they do not differentiate between one living being and another. Such persons treat all living entities equally. They never become overwhelmed by anger like animals who can see nothing without differentiation. Purport: when the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes angry or kills a demon, materially it may appear unfavorable, but spiritually this is a blissful blessing upon him. Therefore, pure devotees do not make any distinction between the Lord's anger and his blessings. They see both with reference to the Lord's behavior with others and themselves. A devotee does not find fault with the behavior of the Lord in any circumstances. Persons who observe everything with differentiation, who are simply attached to fruitive activities, who are mean-minded, who are always pained to see the flourishing condition of others, and who thus give distress to them by uttering harsh and piercing words, have already been killed by providence. Thus there is no need for them to be killed again by an exalted personality like you. Purport: persons who are materialistic and always engage in fruitive activities for material profit cannot endure seeing the flourishing life of others. But for a few persons in Krishna consciousness, the entire world is full of such envious persons, who are perpetually full of anxieties because they are attached to the material body and are without self-realization. Since their hearts are always filled with anxiety, it is understood that they have already been killed by providence. Thus Lord Shiva, as a self-realized Vaiṣṇava, was advised not to kill Daksha. A Vaiṣṇava is described as paradukadukhi, because although he is never distressed in any condition of life, he is distressed to see others in a distressed condition. Vaishnavas therefore should not try to kill by any action of the body or mind, but should try to revive the Krishna consciousness of others out of compassion for them. The Krishna consciousness movement has been started to deliver the envious persons of the world from the clutches of Maya, and even though they are sometimes put in trouble, devotees push on the Krishna consciousness movement in all tolerance. Lord Chaitanya advises, Trinadapi sunichena taror api sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. One can chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking himself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige and ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Shikshashtakam 3. A Vaishnava should follow the examples of such Vaishnavas as Haridas Thakur, Nityananda Prabhu, and also Lord Jesus Christ. There is no need to kill anyone who has already been killed. But it should be noted herewith that a Vaishnava should not tolerate the blaspheming of Vishnu or Vaishnavas, although he should tolerate personal insults to himself. Text 48. My dear Lord, if in some places materialists who are already bewildered by the insurmountable illusory energy of the Supreme Godhead sometimes commit offenses, a saintly person with compassion does not take this seriously. Knowing that they committed the offenses because they were overpowered by the illusory energy, he does not show his prowess to counteract them. Purport: it is said that the beauty of a tapasvi or saintly person is forgiveness. There are many instances in the spiritual history of the world in which many saintly persons, although unnecessarily harassed, did not take action, although they could have done so. Parikshit Maharaj, for example, was unnecessarily cursed by a Brahmin boy, and this was very much regretted by the boy's father. But Parikshit Maharaj accepted the curse and agreed to die within a week, as the Brahmin boy desired. Parikshit Maharaj was the emperor and was full in power both spiritually and materially. But out of compassion and out of respect for the Brahmana community, he did not counteract the action of the Brahmin boy, but agreed to die within 7 days. Because it was desired by Krishna that Parikshit Maharaj agree to the punishment so that the instruction of Srimad Bhagavatam would thus be revealed to the world, Parikshit was advised not to take action. A Vaishnava is personally tolerant for the benefit of others. When he does not show his prowess, this does not mean that he is lacking in strength, but it indicates that he is tolerant for the welfare of the entire human society. 49. My dear Lord, you are never bewildered by the formidable influence of the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore you are omniscient and should be merciful and compassionate upon those who are bewildered by the same illusory energy and are very much attached to fruitive activities. Purport. A Vaishnava is never bewildered by the influence of the external energy because he is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, Daivahiye gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mamevaye prapadyante mayametam tarantite. My divine energy, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Bhagavad Gita 7.14. A Vaishnava should take care of those who are bewildered by this Maya, instead of becoming angry with them, because without a Vaishnava's mercy, they have no way to get out of the clutches of Maya. Those who have been considered by Maya, those who have been condemned by Maya are rescued by the mercy of devotees. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasinabhyevacha patitanam papanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees, who can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Those who are under the influence of the illusory energy are attracted to fruitive activities, but a Vaishnava preacher attracts their hearts to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. 50. My dear Lord Shiva, you are a shareholder of a portion of the sacrifice, and you are the giver of the result. The bad priests did not deliver your share, and therefore you destroyed everything, and the sacrifice remains unfinished. Now you can do the needful and take your rightful share. My dear Lord, by your mercy, the performer of the sacrifice, King Daksha, may get back his life. Bhaga may get back his eyes, Bhrigu may get back his mustache, and Pusha may get back his teeth. O Lord Shiva, may the demigods and the priests whose limbs have been broken by your soldiers recover from the injuries by your grace. O destroyer of the sacrifice, please take your portion of the sacrifice and let the sacrifice be completed by your grace. A sacrifice is a ceremony performed to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, it is stated that everyone should try to understand whether the Supreme Personality of Godhead is satisfied by his activity. In other words, the aim of our activities should be to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just as in an office, it is the duty of the worker to see that the proprietor or the master is satisfied. So everyone's duty is to see whether the Supreme Personality of Godhead is satisfied by one's activity. Activities to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead are prescribed in the Vedic literature, and execution of such activities is called yajna. In other words, acting on behalf of the Supreme Lord is called yajna. One should know very well that any other activity besides yajna is the cause of material bondage. That is explained in Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter, 9th verse. Yagnartat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. Karma bandhana means that if we do not work for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, then the reaction of our work will bind us. One should not work for his own sense gratification. Everyone should work for the satisfaction of God. That is called yajna. After the yajna was performed by Daksha, all the demigods expected prasadam, the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Vishnu. Lord Shiva is one of the demigods, so naturally he also expected his share of the prasadam from the yajna. But Daksha, out of his envy for Lord Shiva, did not invite Shiva to participate in the yajna. nor did he give him his share after the offering. But after the destruction of the yajna arena by the followers of Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma pacified him and assured him that he would get his share of prasadam. Thus he was requested to rectify whatever destruction was caused by the followers. In Bhagavad Gita 3rd chapter, 11th verse, it is said that all the demigods are satisfied when one performs yajna. Because the demigods expect prasadam from yajnas, yajna must be performed. Those who engage in sense-gratifying materialistic activities must perform yajna, otherwise they will be implicated. Thus Daksha, being the father of mankind, was performing yajna, and Lord Shiva expected his share. But since he was not invited, there was trouble. By the mediation of Lord Brahma, however, everything was settled satisfactorily. The performance of yajna is a very difficult task because all the demigods must be invited to participate in the yajna. In this Kali Yuga, it is not possible to perform such costly sacrifices, nor is it possible to invite the demigods to participate. Therefore, in this age, it is recommended Yagnai Sankirtana Prayer Yajantihi Sumedasa. Those who are intelligent should know that in the Kali Yuga, there is no possibility of performing the Vedic sacrifices. But unless one pleases the demigods, there will be no regulated seasonal activities or rainfall. Everything is controlled by the demigods. Under the circumstances in this age, in order to keep the balance of social peace and prosperity, all intelligent men should execute the performance of Sankirtan Yajna by chanting the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One should invite people, chant Hare Krishna, and then distribute prasadam. This yajna will satisfy all the demigods, and thus there will be peace and prosperity in the world. Another difficulty in performing the Vedic rituals is that if one fails to satisfy even one demigod out of many hundreds of thousands of demigods, just as Daksha failed to satisfy Lord Shiva, there will be disaster. But in this age, the performance of sacrifice has been simplified. One can chant Hare Krishna, and by pleasing Krishna, one can satisfy all the demigods automatically. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 6th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Brahma Satisfies Lord Shiva. And what a great chapter. Bravo! Bravissimo! Sadhu, sadhu. Okay, we'll take a couple comments. I have a comment. There needs to be more Sankirtan. Enough messing around. We got to cover the planet. More book distribution, more Harinam, and more prasadam distribution. Okay, I said my piece. Go ahead. Dhruv.
I really liked and appreciated the ending of this last purport. It really just simplified everything down to what you just said in your reflection, but in chanting Hare Krishna. And in that way you're pleasing. You don't have to do this and that. So, various different groups or things, they do all these different things. But Srila Prabhupada says it's so simple here. All you have to do is chant Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
It's really so easy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
If you leave somebody out, too, doing the other... We had experience of that. We used to have this program called Devotee Appreciation Day, affectionately known as DAD, D-A-D. And I think after about the 3rd time we did it, Nirkul and I were driving home, and I said, why do I feel so bad after trying to glorify all the devotees? Is it because you inevitably leave somebody out, or you don't glorify one person as hard as the other one? And it just becomes such a strain. So just having a universal process that pleases everybody, where you can say, yeah, this is for everyone, it's much easier. It's much better than having disastrous results. Okay, what else? Yes.
Just a comment. There's a really profound point that Srila Prabhupada made in text 39 in the purport about Advaitacharya. He says here that Advaita Prabhu's chief concern was to elevate the fallen conditioned souls to the platform of devotional service to Lord Krishna.
Amazing. He's the patron saint of the Hare Krishna movement. It's his loud cries that invited Lord Chaitanya to come. He had so much compassion. Radhagripa, yeah. And then Gopal.
We also have a practical example in our offices. You have a new boss, you wanted to satisfy, So, in any capacity, there's some gap. If he's satisfied, maybe then his boss is not satisfied because he's not aligned. Then maybe co-worker is telling you're making undue advantage. So whatever you're trying to adjust in office or personal family life, in the relations and relatives, and forget what we are not talking about demigods, and there are millions, So this 1-point formula, I think it's a bigger leap.
Yeah.
It's a bigger leap.
It's very relatable, huh? Gopal and then Garland.
In the purport to verse 48 of the 6th chapter, Prabhupada said, in one sentence, he said, "It is said that the beauty of a tapasvi or saintly person is forgiveness." And then there's another purport where Prabhupada also talks about forgiveness. This is from the Bhagavad Gita, but I just thought of it since it's related. And Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita 10.4 through 5, in the purport, he says, Shama, tolerance and forgiveness should be practiced. One should be tolerant and excuse the minor offenses of others. So there's a way in which sometimes, one may get caught up in the little things, and it's like, it's no big deal, like you mentioned before.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't worry about it.
When I was giving a talk at one of the corporations, I showed the 24 gurus. So I talked about one of them was the Karari hawk, who's going off with a piece of, I said it was a mouse, just more convenient. And then bigger hawk came and assailed him and said, give it up or die. So he just dropped it. So they said, the lesson he learned from is drop the mouse. And then when I came back the next time, there were all these people there, and they're going, drop the mouse, drop the mouse. Because it's like such a simple point, but you can overlook it. It's like, it's just a mouse, let it go. You're going to find another one somewhere else. Just for the sake of being right or hanging on to something, you create so much difficulty for yourself and others. Shama, 1-2.
Maharaj, in the same point what Gopal Champur was saying, I think in the same purport Prabhupada says Vaiṣṇava is personally tolerant for the benefit of others. When he does not show his prowess, this does not mean that he is lacking in strength. Rather, it indicates that he is tolerant for the welfare of the entire human society.
That's also in Prabhupada's Vrindavani Bhajan that he wrote before he came to America. And he was saying that some people think that Vaishnavas are impotent people, but he said, look at Arjuna. He fought on the battlefield Kurukshetra. Vaishnavas are not timid. They're ready to fight at any time if necessary for the right cause. So the one-dimensional view of a spiritualist being somebody that's dysfunctional or weak or something like that is refuted. You had one?
Actually, both. They said this, the quotes I want to share both. So, that's that the beauty of the tapasvi is forgiveness, and that it's not a sign of weakness or lack of strength, and that also those who speak harsh and piercing words, they're already destroyed by providence. You don't need to do anything.
What was that about, harsh and piercing words?
That was in the beginning when we started reading that's how Brahma started.
Right.
You don't need to do anything to kill.
They're already killed.
Yeah, they're already killed.
Yeah. Novinsky's?
Question. why is it mentioned that especially leaders or superiors should forgive the minor transgressions and offenses of others? Why especially that is an injunction for leaders and superiors?
Yajyada charati shreshtas.
To teach everyone.
Yeah. The leader inculcates the mood in the community. So whatever the leader does and says, especially says and does, then that's what everybody else will do, and they emulate that. And it's so. There's a queen bee in a hive. The queen goes away, and it's really difficult for the hive to go on. Living entities need a nucleus to gather around. They need somebody to show them an example. I was reading something about how in Christian congregations, they all have their own individual moods, and it's all based on the pastor that's there. Whatever way the pastor is acting and talking, that's how the flavor of the congregation. We see it in ISKCON too, where there's leadership, then most people, you can understand the mood of a particular place and trace it back to the person who's leading.
Maharaj, in this section we see that like Brahma took the lead in harmonizing the situation and everything. He took all the demigods and he did the proper way. But also we see then when the story whole started, that time when first time the Daksha felt offended and then he kind of insulted Shiva. That time we see that Brahma has not told anything, though he was present in that occasion. So I'm just trying to understand that why he didn't correct it at the first place. And
timing is everything. In fact, Napoleon Bonaparte was known as a great leader and commander of armies, and he had a policy that he didn't open his mail for about 3 months because he said 90% of the problems were solved by the time he opened it. And you might notice, people will call with some agitation, anxiety, and if you just wait a few more hours, and they call back, it's like, oh, by the way, it's okay now. But if you had picked it up on the first go around, you would have got sucked in. So sometimes timing is, not sometimes, it's always really important, the timing of something. Some things need to be dealt with immediately. Other things you need more information. Other things, they need to play out a little bit more before you get involved with them. In fact, it's said in the descriptions of autumn, it's not exactly the same point, but it's related, and that is that saintly persons are like waterfalls. They're not always gushing. Sometimes they're silent. They don't come out at all in certain seasons, and other times they just pour forth so much that you have to be careful. It's coming out so hard. So in a similar way, there's a time to act or be effusive about giving advice, and there's other times when you should hold back.
I agree, Maharaj, on that point, but in this case we see that it created a disaster. Like Sati has to leave her body, and it was like already like it reaches to the penultimate, like when like there's so much big fight and everything happens. So in that case also I do agree with your point that you're saying that time is important, but in this case we are saying that it took to so much disaster of the whole scenario, and then even Sati has to leave his body. So still, do you think that the timing was not correct in the first?
I think it's all right. All's well that ends well. Any other things? Yes.
Hare Krishna. So it says that it is stated that everyone should try to understand whether the Supreme Personality of Godhead is satisfied by his activity. So I was wondering, what are some ways that we can understand that the Lord is satisfied with our yajna?
Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado yasya prasada nagati kutopi. There's a way in which if we become aligned with a Vaiṣṇava and we're able to please the Vaiṣṇava, then we can understand that we're pleasing Krishna. The other way is that when we understand clearly what Krishna's intentions and desires are, and we know we're aligned with them properly, then we can assume that we're also pleasing Krishna, because Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And we also, since I mentioned it, the sādhus, it's helpful to get confirmation. Devotees are careful about that. For instance, Kavirāja Gosvāmī, when he was about to write the Caitanya Caritāmṛta, everyone told him he should do it, but he still went to the deity and said, should I do? Garland fell down. Everyone said, yay! And so devotees are careful to check in with Guru, make sure they're following Shastra, and also the sādhus can be really helpful, because it's easy to doubt oneself, but if you have people around you who have your best interest in mind, and you can consult with them and say, how am I doing? Because it's hard to see sometimes how we're doing. Because there's also detractors. As soon as you try to do something for Krishna, then somebody's going to come along and says, you're doing it completely wrong. So you have to have trusted people that you can say, am I really doing it wrong, or am I okay? And it's like, no, you're fine. Yes. So many people criticize Prabhupada, including his godbrothers. They told him he was doing everything wrong. Shouldn't have crossed the ocean. What are you doing with all these Westerners? Shouldn't be doing marriage ceremonies. Who told you could do this? You guys are black sheep. You're creating a bunch of black sheep. So you have to be determined also when you hear all that. Anyway, go ahead, please.
Kind of off of Deodata Prabhu's point, I was meditating on earlier and kind of thinking about how when Sati leaves her body, it actually is described that the impetus for her meditation is the devotion she has to the lotus feet of Lord Shiva. That's actually what gives her the power to leave her body. It gives her like the fire that's kind of described there. And it's interesting because in our devotional life we're getting that impetus by meditating on Vaishnavas that inspire us. That's the way we can do things.
Nice point. Yes, Nanda.
Do you have any thoughts on why, at the end of the chapter, Brahma's saying, "My dear Lord, by your mercy, can Daksha get back his life, Bhaga get back his eyes, Bhrigu his mustache, etc., etc." But he doesn't ask about Sati. Why doesn't he ask that Sati gets her life back? Any thoughts on that? I mean, he lost his mustache, the guy lost his teeth, and get them back.
Well, so it was mentioned a little earlier that it was already clear an understanding that she was going to take another body and come back.
Daksha was going to take another, not that I want to argue, but Daksha was going to take another body also.
Well, we didn't know that yet. I'm just saying that it was mentioned earlier that Sati was already expected to come back as Parvati. So it's kind of like yes.
Well, in this case, Daksha didn't get, because his head was burned, so he had to get another head. And her body was also burned, so that was it. She was gone. And she had to take another body, so she came back, but not in that way immediately. As in case of Daksha, here is another head, but her body was just gone.
Yeah, but everybody knows you can get a free new body. I mean, it was in this story also about Cupid. He got burned to ashes by Shiva, and then Rati had gone to Shiva to get a benediction, to get her husband's body back, get him a body. So he said, I'll give you benediction, but at the same time Shambhara came there and said, I want a benediction too. And Shiva said, what do you want? And he looked at Rati, because he was so lusty, he said, I want her. So Shiva had it all worked out, and he said, Rati, you go with him. And she started crying. He said, don't worry, we'll work it all out. So she went to the house of Shambhara, and because of Lord Shiva's benediction and her mystic potency, then Shambhara never came near her. And meanwhile, Shambhara went and stole Pradyumna away from Rukmini when he was only 10 days old, and threw him in the ocean because they thought he was an enemy. He thought he was an enemy, and then a fish swallowed him, and then a fisherman caught the fish and brought it back to the kitchen where Rati was working, and then they cut the fish open. There was a little child inside, and then the child grew up really fast, and it turned out that was the new body of Cupid, and Cupid actually merged into the body of Pradyumna. So then she looked at him, even though he was just growing up, as in kind of a conjugal way, and he said, "Hey, wait, what are you doing?" And, and she didn't even understand, we're married. And then said, "Yeah, but how are we going to get out of here?" And she infused him with mystic powers, and he fought off Shambhara, and then they went back to Dwarka, and then when Rukmini came, milk came from her breast because she could viscerally understand, this is my child, and the timing was just perfect. He would have been that old because he grew up and synchronized with the age he would have been, and then they got married. They were married again, and they met. So it happens all the time. These things are going on. Yes.
I was thinking how it's interesting what Nanda Matiji was saying about why sati. I was listening to BVL. I often listen to it, and I was referring to Canto 1, Chapter 9, where Bhishma Deva passes away in the presence of Lord Krishna. Talks about how Kunti suffered and she was destined to suffer, and also how the Pandavas, despite their strength and their pious activities and even their weapons, and Krishna on their side, they temporarily suffered. And it was also talking about how Bhishma Deva suffered, and Prabhupada mentions that like in traditional society, the mother-in-law teaches her daughter in order to teach her daughter-in-law, but the daughter won't take things personally because she knows the mother is doing it for a higher purpose. So I was just reflecting on that in relation to how Prabhupada is also showing, and the great acharyas and Krishna showing that how magnanimous his devotees are, that Lord Shiva, that he forgave and he became pacified.
Nice points. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
VSL, VNL. What's BVL? Oh, they have programs or something?
The Vedanta Vedic Library, it's the Prabhupada's audio books online. It's an app.
I see, BVL.
Yeah.
Thank you. Excellent points.
Thank you.
Okay. We end at 6:30, right? Yeah. So we have a few more minutes. I'd like you to know we're in the bonus round now. We passed our quota a little while ago. I know it makes me happy. The sage, this is chapter 7, the sacrifice performed by Daksha. The sage Maitreya, I like this chapter. It's where everyone gets their stuff back. And I was thinking like, kind of like, okay. The sacrifice performed by Daksha. The sage Maitreya said, O mighty armed Vidura, Lord Shiva, being thus pacified by the words of Lord Brahma, spoke as follows in answer to the request of Lord Brahma. Lord Shiva said, My dear father, Brahma, I do not mind the offenses created by the demigods. Because they are childish and less intelligent, I do not take a serious view of their offenses. I have punished them only in order to right them. Purport. There are two types of punishment. One is that which a conqueror imposes on an enemy, and the other is like that a father imposes on his son. There is a gulf of difference between these two kinds of punishment. Lord Shiva is by nature a Vaiṣṇava, a great devotee, and his name in this connection is Ashutosh. He is always satisfied, and therefore he did not become angry as if he were an enemy. He is not inimical to any living entity, but he always wishes the welfare of all. Whenever he chastises a person, it is just like a father's punishment of his son. Lord Shiva is like a father because he never takes seriously any offense by any living entities, especially the demigods. Lord Shiva continued, since the head of Daksha has already been burned to ashes, he will have the head of a goat. The demigod known as Bhaga will be able to see his share of sacrifice. I need a short break. Okay. The demigod known as Bhaga will be able to see his share of sacrifice through the eyes of Mitra. The demigod Pusha will be able to chew only through the teeth of his disciples, and if alone, he will have to satisfy himself by eating dough made from chicken. Hare Krishna. It's better to not get into these kerfuffles, because even though you may fix it later, you may not like how it turns out. The demigod Pusha will be able to chew only through the teeth of his disciples, and if alone, he will have to satisfy himself by eating dough made from chickpea flour. But the demigods who have agreed to give me my share of the sacrifice will recover from all their injuries. The demigod Pusha became dependent on his disciples for chewing. Otherwise, he was allowed to swallow only dough made of chickpea flour. Thus his punishment continued. He could not use his teeth for eating purposes because he had laughed at Lord Shiva, deriding him by showing his teeth. In other words, it was not appropriate for him to have teeth because he used them against Lord Shiva. Those who have had their arms cut off will have to work with the arms of Ashvini Kumara, and those whose hands were cut off will have to do their work with the hands of Pusha. The priest will also have to act in that manner. As for Bhrigu, he will have the beard from the goat's head. Purport. Bhrigu Muni, a great supporter of Daksha, was awarded the beard of the goat's head, which was substituted for the head of Daksha. It appears from the exchange of Daksha's head that the modern scientific theory that the brain substance is the cause of all intelligent work is not valid. The brain substance is the cause of all intelligent work is not valid. The brain substance of Daksha and that of a goat are different, but Daksha still acted like himself, even though his head was replaced by that of a goat. The conclusion is that it is the particular consciousness of an individual soul which acts. The brain substance is only an instrument which has nothing to do with real intelligence. The real intelligence, mind, and consciousness are part of the particular individual soul. It will be found in the verses ahead that after Daksha's head was replaced by the goat's head, he was as intelligent as he had previously been. He prayed very nicely to satisfy Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, which is not possible for a goat to do. Therefore, it is definitely concluded that the brain substance is not the center of intelligence. It is the consciousness of a particular soul that works intelligently. The whole movement of Krishna consciousness is to purify the consciousness. It doesn't matter what kind of brain one has, because if he simply transfers his consciousness from matter to Krishna, his life becomes successful. It is confirmed by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita that anyone who takes up Krishna consciousness achieves the highest perfection of life, regardless of whatever abominable condition of life he may have fallen into. Specifically, anyone in Krishna consciousness goes back to Godhead, back to home, on leaving his present material body. 6. The great sage Maitreya said, My dear Vidura, all the personalities present were very much satisfied in heart and soul upon hearing the words of Lord Shiva, who is the best among the benedictors. Purport: in this verse, Lord Shiva is described as Midhushtama, the best of the benedictors. He is also known as Ashutosh, which indicates that he is very quickly satisfied and very quickly angered. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that less intelligent persons go to the demigods for material benediction. In this connection, people generally go to Lord Shiva, and because he is always quickly satisfied and gives benediction to his devotees without consideration, he is called Midhushtama, or the best of the benedictors. Materialistic persons are always anxious to get material profit, but they are not serious about spiritual profit. Sometimes, of course, it so happens that Lord Shiva becomes the best benedictor in spiritual life. It is said that once a poor brahmana worshipped Lord Shiva for a benediction, and Lord Shiva advised the devotee to go see Sanatana Gosvāmī. The devotee went to Sanatana Gosvāmī and informed him that Lord Shiva had advised him to seek out the best benediction from him, Sanatan. Sanatan had a touchstone with him, which he kept with the garbage. On the request of the poor brahmana, Sanatan gave him the touchstone, and the brahmin was very happy to have it. He now could get as much gold as he desired simply by touching the touchstone to iron. But after he left Sanatan, he thought, if a touchstone is the best benediction, why has Sanatana Gosvāmī kept it with the garbage? He therefore returned and asked Sanatana Gosvāmī, Sir, if this is the best benediction, why did you keep it with the garbage? Sanatana Gosvāmī then informed him, actually this is not the best benediction, but are you prepared to take the best benediction from me? The brahmana said, yes, sir. Lord Shiva has sent me to you for the best benediction. Then Sanatana Gosvāmī asked him to throw the touchstone in the water nearby and then come back. The poor brahmana did so, and when he returned, Sanatana Gosvāmī initiated him with the Hare Krishna mantra. Thus, by the benediction of Lord Shiva, the brahmana got the association of the best devotee of Lord Krishna, and was thus initiated in the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thereafter, Bhrigu, the head of the great sages, invited Lord Shiva to come to the sacrificial arena, and thus the demigods, accompanied by the sages, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, all went to the place where the great sacrifice was being performed. Purport: the whole sacrifice arranged by King Daksha had been disturbed by Lord Shiva. Therefore, all the demigods present there, along with Lord Brahma and the great sages, specifically requested Lord Shiva to come and revive the sacrificial fire. There is a common phrase, Shivahina Yagya. Any sacrifice without the presence of Lord Shiva is baffled. Although Lord Vishnu is Yageshvara, the Supreme Personality of God in the matter of sacrifice, still in each yagya it is necessary for all the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, to be present. 8. After everything was executed exactly as directed by Lord Shiva, Daksha's body was joined to the head of the animal that was meant to be killed in the sacrifice. Purport: this time all the demigods and great sages were very careful not to irritate Lord Shiva. Therefore, whatever he asked was done. It is specifically said here that Daksha's body was joined to the head of an animal, a goat. When the animal's head was fixed on the body of King Daksha, Daksha was immediately brought to consciousness, and as he awakened from sleep, the king saw Lord Shiva standing before him. The example given here is that Daksha got up as if he were awakened from deep sleep. In Sanskrit, this is called supta ivotastau. The meaning is that after a man awakens from sleep, he immediately remembers all the duties which he must execute. Daksha was killed, and his head was taken away and burnt to ashes. His body was lying dead, but by the grace of Lord Shiva, as soon as the head of a goat was joined to the body, Daksha came back to consciousness again. This indicates that consciousness is also individual. Daksha actually took another body when he took on the head of a goat, but because consciousness is individual, his consciousness remained the same through his bodily although his bodily condition changed. Thus, bodily construction has nothing to do with the development of consciousness. Consciousness is carried by the transmigration of the soul. There are many instances of this in Vedic history, such as the case of Maharaj Bharat. After quitting his body as a king, Maharaj Bharat was transferred to the body of a deer, but he retained the same consciousness. He knew that though formerly he was King Bharat, he had been transferred to the body of a deer because of his absorption in thinking of a deer at the time of his death. In spite of his having the body of a deer, however, his consciousness was as it was in the body of King Bharat. The arrangement by the Lord is so nice that if a person's consciousness is turned into Krishna consciousness, there is no doubt that in his next life he will be a great devotee of Krishna, even if he is offered a different type of body. At that time, when Daksha saw Lord Shiva, who rides upon a bull, his heart, which was polluted by envy of Lord Shiva, was immediately cleansed, just as the water in a lake is cleansed by autumn rains. Here is an example of why Lord Shiva is called auspicious. If anyone sees Lord Shiva with devotion and reverence, his heart is immediately cleansed. King Daksha was polluted by envy of Lord Shiva, and yet by seeing him with a little love and devotion, his heart immediately became cleansed. In the rainy season, the reservoirs of water become dirty and muddy, but as soon as the autumn rain comes, all the water immediately becomes clear and transparent. Similarly, although Daksha's heart was impure because of his slandering Lord Shiva, for which he was severely punished, Daksha now came to consciousness, and just by seeing Lord Shiva with veneration and respect, he became immediately purified. King Daksha wanted to offer prayers to Lord Shiva, but as he remembered the ill-fated death of his daughter Sati, his eyes filled with tears, and in bereavement his voice choked up, and he could not say anything. At this time, King Daksha, afflicted by love and affection, was very much awakened to his real senses. With great endeavor, he pacified his mind, checked his feelings, and with pure consciousness began to offer prayers to Lord Shiva. Okay, last chance for reflections or questions. Yes.
I just remember one time distributing books, and we passed by a butcher shop, and outside they had the picture of a man with a goat's head cutting up some meat. So we thought about Daksha.
Yeah. I used to see in Calcutta, when they still had those telas, where humans would pull the rickshaw by foot. A lot of time they're barefoot. They just run through the streets. And when I went in to spend a little more time in Calcutta, I saw that they all ate the same thing. They ate raw chickpea dough. Of course, they put onions and garlic in it, but that was it, just chickpea dough. It was pusha. Otherwise, if you wanted anything else, like papanam, or, some kind of sabjis, chapatis, his disciples had to chew it for him. But he did say earlier that anybody who capitulated and was repentant would be healed. Anyway, I'm always surprised that Daksha's doesn't seem to be that concerned about having the head of a goat anyway. It's not like he became remorseful or anything. He was just glad to be back and be able to make up for his offense. Of course, I think he does more later with Narada and gets in more trouble. Any other points? Yeah.
Prabhupada was saying that how through this goat changing the head, we can see that the intelligence is not in the brain, as the scientist says. It's the consciousness, the soul carries the consciousness, and the soul has the actual intelligence which manifests in the body. Otherwise, Daksha would have the goat intelligence when he he got the goat's head.
Yeah. Matak smritya jnanam apovanam sha. So Krishna provides the intelligence, as we know from Asagunamaya bhavera guna sukshmandriya aviso nirmiteshu nirvisto bhunte bhuteshu tadgunan. Even when the soul goes into Mahavishnu and then comes back out again, and he gets another body, then Krishna reminds him of his previous aspirations. And so, according to our karma, we get a particular kind of body that facilitates what we wanted. It's filled in by material nature, Patanjali Muni says, according to the aggregate of desires we have when we leave this body, material nature. And Krishna says the same thing. Shotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam granam eva cha dishtayam manaschayam vishayan upasevate. He gets a custom-made body according to his desires from his previous life. And so one case I'm making is that we have remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness because of supersoul, and it's awarded because of karma. But then the cases that Prabhupada made here, you could transcend that. You can transcend the karma. Mamsha yovya bicharina bhakti yogina sevate. If you rise above that karma, then in any body you can get intelligence from Krishna to see things from a particular perspective. Yes.
Guru Maharaj, my nephew actually came first time to Vrindavan. When I took him there, I asked him which temple he liked the most. He mentioned Krishna Balaram temple. When I asked him why, and then he's very shy and bit reserved.
He said what?
He was very shy and bit reserved. He doesn't speak a lot, like his observation.
Yeah.
But when I poked him and asked him why, then he said he's fascinated by Prabhupada's making this knowledge available to the all section of the society, and without any discrimination. Earlier, this knowledge was reserved only to the higher section of the society. I was just thinking how a minute observation of a first-time visitor and to the Vrindavan, he loves that spot. Really grateful to Prabhupada for all what we are doing. It is just
and there's so much history behind it too. I was just listening to Prabhupada this morning, and he was talking about the great fight that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had for so many years to overcome the Smarta Brahmins. And he said, Prabhupada even told a story about how they tried to assassinate him. They tried to bribe a policeman and said, we're planning something, just don't do anything. He said, well, normally we do stuff like that, but not for a sadhu. Sorry, can't help you out. And the policeman told Srila Bhaktisiddhanta what was afoot. And in that, Prabhupada was expressing Lord Chaitanya's willingness to accept Haridas Thakur, Mohammedan, who was totally untouchable in the Hindu society at that time, Rupa and Sanatan, who had been estranged from their own culture. They were born in Saraswat Brahmin families, and they'd just been outcast. And there's a way that it's just a merciful line coming down from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Also, about coming into an ISKCON temple, you see there's an acharya there. If you go to Radha Govinda temple in Jaipur, there's no Vyasasana. There's no acharya there. It's just Radha Govinda directly, which is, of course, we go there worshiping as servants of the servant's servant, but it's a kind of unique experience going to an ISKCON temple. It's very deliberately and clearly watched over by the acharya. Most people don't have that. It's just us and Krishna.
I guess maybe it's not completely related, but it's just an experience on book distribution today. I was just seeing how Prabhupada's books are all attractive, because ultimately it's Krishna there in the books. And there was these two little beggar boys that came up to the table, and then they were just laughing and smiling, and then they each took a book and gave 5 rupees, and then one of the boys, he was just so enthusiastic, he ran over and grabbed the little girl and brought her over to the table, and then she also took a book and gave some rupees. They must have been like less than 8 years old. So it was really nice just to see that. I mean, I don't speak Hindi, so I was just observing that, how they were so attracted to the books and willing to give donations even.
Wow,
nice.
What a great story from the Marg. So magical. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Panchatattva, Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Radha Govinda, Shri Radha Gopinath, if you so desire, please instill in us the mood of compassion of Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and our whole disciplic succession. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer, in whole or in part, please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande. Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Nitai Gaura Haribo. Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Nitai Gaura Haribo. Panchakobharisha Kripasindabeva Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaiṣṇavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sweets for everybody. What? Yay? We made an offering. We offered.